This is Perspective Shift, Episode 9, Holding Space, and I'm your host, April Rodriguez. Hopefully you were able to use last week's forward-moving energy to work through any blocks to your goals. This week, I wanted to talk about holding space. Holding space for yourself and loved ones is such an important concept, and one that took me a while to fully understand. Most of my life was spent with rose-colored glasses on. I thought life played out just like the Disney movies that filled my childhood. It seemed like a formula that was obvious and that everyone knew about. I always did my best to achieve this ideal, and because of this, I believe I had very high expectations of myself and of others. I found myself expecting more out of my relationships, both romantic and familial, than was fair to anyone. I held on to my grudges and hurt feelings way longer than was necessary. In high school, I took a peer counseling class with an amazing woman, Mrs. Carolyn Martins. She was my first introduction to holding space for someone. Not only did she hold space for me when I really needed it, but she explained to me the importance of listening to someone, not giving them solutions or trying to fix it, but being supportive while they work through their problems themselves. I definitely understood the words and understood the concept to a point, but I don't think I really had a deep understanding of it until I met Anthony. I'm a super sensitive person, both emotionally and physically. Sometimes the emotions are happy, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're frustrated, and sometimes they're a mix of both happy and weepy, but they're always big emotions. They tend to be a lot for people to handle, so they're something I keep to myself for the most part. Maybe it's because Anthony has big emotions too, but it felt like he always just knew what to do with all of those big emotions and vice versa. They weren't too much to handle anymore. Once it clicked, I understood that I don't have to match his emotions. In fact, matching the intensity of the emotions only makes things worse. Of course he does the same for me. My waves of tears and overwhelming emotions don't drown him. He grabs his life raft raincoat and finds me amid the storm and holds me. Once I was able to understand the concept with him, it fell into place with everyone else in my life. I started to understand that I was taking others' emotions way too personally and not giving them the space that they needed. It's almost like we're balloons. Deflated, we don't require much space, but once we fill up with emotions, we require a significant amount of space. Sometimes it's easier to hold space for a loved one, like when they're going through something we've personally experienced, and other times it's difficult, like when someone makes the same mistake over and over, and you want to shake them and ask them what's wrong with you. But here's the thing. Before you practice holding space for others, it's important that you spend some time making and holding space for yourself. It's difficult to be there to calmly provide a safe space to others when your own emotions are tumultuous and fired up. It's important to allow yourself time to decompress after a difficult day or situation, whether that be through crying, resting, some form of exercise, a bath, or anything else that helps bring your emotions, mental space, and body back to equilibrium. Part of holding space for yourself also includes allowing yourself to cry in the corner of your bed without considering yourself weak for doing so. Allowing yourself to be frustrated without being considered a hothead. Allowing yourself to make a mistake without being considered a failure. Make some room for your own balloon to expand to something else, but be able to come back down to normal. Once you've practiced holding space for yourself, you'll be in a better place to hold space for others. For 13 years, I was a substitute teacher in the El Rancho district. One year, I got a long-term job covering for a teacher who was ill. The position was indefinite because they weren't sure when she would come back. But about 3 months into the position, she passed away, and I found myself responsible for holding space for over 150 teens. We spent the first day in calm, peaceful quiet. They wrote letters, created cards, talked if they felt like it, or did absolutely nothing if they felt like it. I did my best to let them process the information without being overwhelming. There were even some students who had no feelings about it, because they didn't really feel like they knew the teacher or had a connection with her. I held space for them too, so they didn't feel like a monster for not crying or being as emotional as some of the other students. Honestly though, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't had a strong support system. My department head at the time was Yami Flores, who was also my former AP Bio teacher and just all around amazing and sweet human being. That same day when she broke the news to me, she held space for me. She let me talk about it, ask questions, even dumb ones, so I would be ready to hold a lot of space for others. Again, holding space for others requires that either you've held space for yourself or that you let someone else hold space for you when you need it. Again, holding space for others requires that either you've held space for yourself or that you let someone else hold space for you when you need it, because it requires us to be fully aware and in control of our emotions, reactions, and judgments in order to support someone else's feelings and thoughts. This week, I'm going to mindfully practice holding space for myself and for others, and I invite you to practice with me. I'm sure each of us holds space for others regularly, but this week I thought we could practice doing it on purpose. Because there will be times when we're called to hold space and it won't be easy. But if we practice, those moments won't be as difficult. Lastly, before I move on, I wanted to remind everyone that it's important to listen to your intuition and to set boundaries with others, because there may be some who will, unknowingly or not, try to take advantage of the space you make for them. This week in astrology, we get a break from all the celestial movements from last week and only have one major movement this week. Pluto goes retrograde on April 24th in Capricorn. Since Pluto is the furthest away, its energy isn't necessarily heavy, but it can be intense and have influence in our lives, so this retrograde will give us a great time to reflect. Pluto also has the biggest orbit, so it stays in one sign for about 21 years, so its effects tend to span over generations. Pluto is the planet of renewal and rebirth, so this retrograde favors reflecting on power struggles in your life and any issues that you may have with self-control. This is a great time to kick a habit that's been holding you back from being your best self. Pluto goes retrograde every year for about 5 months, so you'll have plenty of time to work on your goals of releasing bad habits. For me personally, I'm going to use the time to try to release my scarcity mentality. I think my fear of not having enough holds me back, right now especially. I do believe that it's important to plan for the future and to prepare, but I think right now, at this stage in my life, my mind would be better focused on building. It's difficult to think about saving for the future when you barely have enough for the present. So again, this retrograde in Pluto is a great time to look back at where you are in your life right now, what issues you may be having with control, and how you can release any negative habits. This week in Tarot, I pulled the Ten of Cups reversed and the High Priestess reversed. The Ten of Cups when upright shows the image of a well-working, beautiful family. Like a well-oiled machine, relationships are running smoothly, everyone's happy and feeling appreciated, there's peace and happiness all around. When reversed, it asks us to reflect on our relationships, and just like in this week's topic, it wants us to ask, are my expectations in my relationships too high? Am I putting too much pressure on my relationships? It asks us to remember that each of us is only human. We're prone to making mistakes. This week it seems that our energy is being directed to repairing the connections in our lives. We're being asked to forgive others. Of course, again, before we can hold space for others, we should be able to do it for ourselves. So make sure that you're living your life aligned with your personal values before repairing your relationships. The second card I pulled definitely supports the idea that it's important to trust and listen to your intuition. The High Priestess when upright shows someone in touch with their feminine and spiritual side. They're a force to be reckoned with. When reversed, however, it shows that one might be out of touch with their intuition. They aren't feeling strong and powerful, but lost and maybe a little anxious. The High Priestess reversed reminds us that all is not lost, and that each of us has the ability to tap into the amazing energies within us. All we have to do is come back to ourselves and trust our intuition. Our intuition knows what's good for us. If you feel like you've been out of touch with your intuition, all it takes is a little alone time away from all the distractions in life to come back to your center. If you feel like you've been out of touch with your intuition, all it takes is a little alone time away from all the distractions in life to come back to your center. Together, I believe the cards have the same message as the topic this week. There seems to be an opportunity arising this week to hold space for a loved one going through a difficult time. But before we can do this, we have a little work to do ourselves. First, we have to make space for ourselves to prepare us for the task ahead. Spending a little time distressing, doing something nice for yourself. Personally, I like to bike ride. I never feel more free than when I'm on my bike. It takes all the cares of the world away. Once I'm done with my bike ride and my mind is clear and fresh again, I'm allowed to look at the problem with a clean start. And then I can actually do my best to work through the problem and find a solution that's satisfying to me. Whether it's a creative problem, a business problem, or a relationship problem, it really helps to distress before trying to actually look at it and solve it. This week, I think it's important to practice holding space because I get the feeling we're going to have to practice holding space for others in the very near future. Before I go, I wanted to remind everyone that I do spiritual guidance readings for $25. You can do that in person through Google Duo or a written report. I also do stick and poke tattoos. Just check out my flash sheet for the month on my profile at Modest Betty. Also next week I will be having a tarot workshop on Sunday, April 28th, 2019 from 12 to 2 p.m. in Pico Rivera. My friend Brittany will be sharing her knowledge on candles and sharing how to incorporate magics and crystals into your tarot practice. The workshop is only $10 and you can reserve your spot by sending me a DM. Well, that's it for me. Thank you as always for tuning in to Perspective Shift. I hope you have a great week and I'll see you next time. Bye!